Shalom, shalom, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Pulse of Israel here in our eternal and ancestral homeland, the land of Israel, in our beautiful biblical ancestral Judean hills. Today, I'm going to be speaking with a doctor in Melbourne, Australia, Dr. Debbie Herbst, uh, mother, grandmother, doctor, very involved in the Jewish community there, very involved in the medical community there. And we're going to be talking today about the very, very saddening and frightening incident from last week, where an Israeli person on the internet had some program, some social media program, together with two Muslim Australian nurses, I think, or they said they were doctors, nurses, and they said straight out how they would kill Israelis, how they do kill Israelis, how they've killed Israelis.
Let's say an Israeli,
I
God
won't treat
forbid,
them. I won't treat them. I'll kill them.
you'll kill them. So if an Israeli is in Australia and God forbid something happened to him and he comes
Not
to your
God forbid.
hospital,
I hope to God.
would you kill him?
You have
And this has been a huge uproar in the whole world, the whole Jewish world specifically, in general, and specifically in Australia. So I wanted to get more insight specifically on the ground in Australia from Dr. Debbie Herbst. So, Shalom, Debbie, how are you?
Shalom, shalom. How are you? We're good. Baruch Hashem.
Baruch Hashem, doing well as possible in today's times, which I believe are very Geula redemptive times, with the good and the scary aspect of it. But I wanted to hear from you, from the ground, how where did this come from? How did the Australian community deal with it? The medical community, the Jewish community? Please share with us this whole incident from your perspective.
Okay, so it's now Sunday evening here, and this came to light Wednesday morning. So we've had a couple of days, I guess, to sort of digest it a little bit. But I think we've all gone through a range of thoughts and emotions. And the first emotion was absolute disbelief. So I became aware of it quite shortly after it hit. Well, actually, before it was in the widespread or in the general media, there was a doctor's chat that I'm a part of, which has at least 400-500 doctors from across Australia. That was actually started a WhatsApp chat that was started with Jewish health professionals after October 7 to support one another. And in fact, actually, we'll talk about it a little bit later, but the fact that this WhatsApp chat even exists speaks very much to the need for support, that we all need to support one another because we've all been through a lot, and continue to go through a lot, clearly. So I became aware of it on this doctor's WhatsApp that around 7 a.m. And I think it only had made its way to the Jewish media personality, Shari Markson. And somehow, obviously, as things go in the social media world, or in they once it's shared with one person, they go viral. It goes viral, as they say. So, and my first reaction was, this cannot be real. Like, it's not possible. This is made up. Someone's making this up. Like, it's not as a joke, but people, I don't know. It's hard to know, really. But that was my first reaction. And I looked at the comments of the other doctors on the chat, and everyone was saying, "Come on, this is not real. Like, who would make this up, and what?" And it was a little bit of. And then very quickly we became aware that actually it was real, that this was what turned out to be nurses who were on night shift. So this was only a few hours old, the video. They were on some social media, I don't know what thing that people go on, and with Max from Israel. And it was very real. We were made to understand this actually happened, and the words that they said they actually said. So, after the first, it can't be real, disbelief, denial, I guess, like they say, the grief reactions, the first one of them is denial. This couldn't have happened. This is not possible. The next one was shock. Like, this is shocking. Like, really? And I think I must have I just watched it and watched it. What did they say? What did they say? They said they're going to kill Jews. They said, and he asked them a few times. So if an Israeli came to your hospital, you would. And he said, and it's interesting to note, he said, and if an Israeli needed to come to hospital, God forbid, and one of the people who was on, not God forbid, I hope they come, and I won't treat them, and not only I won't treat them, I will kill them. And you have to, it's so shocking that, it's like sometimes when something is so shocking, you just want to, did I hear that? Is that what they really said? And so, I went to work like trying to digest this. We have health, and they actually represented themselves as doctors, but it became very clear throughout the morning they're not doctors, they were nurses. Even that was a lie. If they can lie about that. So it just the world went crazy. Like that whole day was, and it went into the mainstream media very quickly. So there was, from that like disbelief through to the shock, but then we went to like, well, are we actually surprised? Because we know that healthcare workers, and I guess the very vocal, loud minority opinion of people is that's what people think. And then it went, well, we know many other, and we do know that there is a cancer amongst healthcare workers, who feel this way and who think similar to what those two nurses expressed. We've just never caught it on camera before. So it was a little bit, yeah, what do you think? This is like the tip of the iceberg. There are definitely people who think this. There is definitely people who hold those sentiments. It's never been caught on camera in such, you know, abhorrent, evil expression of actually wanting to kill us. We have killed people already, and we will kill people. Like that's just so shocking, and no other way than saying just abhorrent evil, really. So, and then we were like, well, what's going to happen? Because I think that's been our issue, that this has been a stepwise progression since October 7. I don't know if you're aware of that. The next day, October 8th, there was a very famous protest, Palestinian protest at the Opera House,
Yep.
where they were people with the Palestinian flag and smoke bombs and killing, you know, now it became controversial whether they said gas the Jews or get the Jews. It doesn't really, I mean, gas the Jews but they were out to get Jews on October 8th, way before Israel ever went into Gaza, way before they could ever accuse us of genocide and baby killers and all the other things that we've been accused of since then, and nothing happened. The authorities did nothing. And most of us feel that's when this cancer started in Australia. I mean, obviously the cancer, there were seeds of it before, but the fact that the authorities did nothing about that, and that very day, imams and Muslim clerics were in the streets celebrating. This is a day of elation. This is a day of celebration. This is a day, and nothing happened to them. Like they were just allowed to drive through the streets, not so much in Melbourne, but in Sydney. And there was no repercussion whatsoever. So, and we've seen this, and then it's been, they all talk like every country, freedom of speech, people are allowed to express what they want, but this isn't freedom of speech, this is hate speech. And there are laws about hate speech. So now we've seen this expression of we want to kill you is the progression. And like I said, it's just they were stupid enough, I've got to say that, to get caught. I mean, what they were thinking now is hard to imagine. They clearly were on some social media platform that's being recorded, and anyway, but so then it was this, went from the shock, the disbelief, to actually, well, yeah, we know this. It's just now out there. It's been exposed.
Yeah, and I guess the two questions that I follow up with is one, how has the Australian medical system now dealt with these two nurses? But believe it or not, like to me, the bigger question is, how is the medical system and especially the Jewish community going to deal with the fact that, yes, this is a cancer that exists, and I'm sure there are many doctors and nurses in Australian hospitals and medical centers who are Muslim and not necessarily knowing if they are one of those that believe in the same belief that these two nurses are, who I hope were fired up as of now.
Yes, so so there's a range of emotions. So thankfully, the health minister in New South Wales, and even the premier of New South Wales came out very quickly, very strongly. They will never work in their health system ever again. They're immediately stood down, pending investigation, but they're immediately stood down. In other words, a lot of times when things happen, we have to investigate, we have to look in the circumstance, what happened. This was immediate. They were immediately stood down, immediately they lost their registration to work as nurses anywhere in Australia, actually. Um, they said they also launched a police investigation, so they were stood down from their positions, as well as having a police investigation being launched, which is still undergoing. I read something today though somewhere. Yes, but of course they've already, they've made themselves the victims now. One of them is in
Wow.
hospital, this mental health. So now they're the victims. Like, his first response was, "Oh, it was a joke, it was a misunderstanding." That was his first response. It's a joke, misunderstanding. Then, of course, they've got lawyers. They're not cooperating with the police because now he's in hospital, so he doesn't have to cooperate because and so, yeah, it's very quickly. And I think that ever since October 7, that's what we find happens. Like we feel like these outrageous things happen, and within a day or less, it's all a matter of like, hang on a second, who's the victims here? It's sort of anyway. So that's sort of happened, but at least very swift action was taken, and we were very comforted, I think, by a politician getting up. The health minister in New South Wales was very strong, very forceful. And the Secretary of Health, actually, she was actually very emotional. I mean, these are all obviously non-Jewish people, and she was. They were also shocked. They were shocked to their core that people working in their health system, representing their public, very world-renowned health system that we have in Australia, where it's all for one. Everyone gets equal treatment, and everyone should be able to come to hospital and be treated without any thoughts of prejudice. They were shocked that their health system has been exposed. So I must say their condemnation was very swift. Having said that, then you asked about the rest of the medical world. So since then, I feel like all the different medical authorities have to come up with their own statement. So other hospitals then followed suit. Then, of course, there's been more general statements, some better, some, they love to say every time they condemn anti-Semitism and Islamophobia,
Right.
which is so the ones who add and Islamophobia, you already know. I mean, they're just saying it because they have to come out with some statement. I have seen a couple of statements. So all along, also, ever since October 7, we all wait. Where are the Muslim leaders? Where are the
Mm.
moderate Muslim leaders coming out condemning? So a couple of there have been some statements, even from there's a Muslim Medical Association. So there have been some more than at any other time since October 7, some reasonable responses, even from some of the Muslim leadership. There's one particular doctor, a Lebanese Muslim doctor in Sydney also, and he came out quite strongly, saying condemning it, and this is not what we stand for. So there has been some statements. I think, like I said, more than anything, you're right. This is really gotten to the in the kishkas of everybody, to the average Australian, and even to the we have not seen this level of support for anything since October 7 from
Wow.
as broad a cross section. Even like the nurses union, for example, who are very, more, I don't know how it is in other countries, but the nurses union here is quite known to be quite left leaning and have not been very friendly at all, that say, since October 7. So all of these organizations, so like I said, some more, some less, the ones who, in the next sentence talk about Islamophobia. But so I think that, yeah, this has really rocked everyone to the like, we have to come out. I think maybe because you're right, people at their most vulnerable time when they're in hospital, to think that the people who are supposed to be taking care of you could express this is just it speaks to everybody. I guess it Jew, non-Jew alike. Like, and if they say that about, if they hold such disgusting, thoughts about Jewish people, well, how do we know they don't hold that about others? And like you say, I guess it's really yeah, rocked everybody. So
Listen, I've been very vocal for years in trying to help at least my fellow Jews and freedom-loving people all over the world realize we don't understand Islam. And I don't want to use this talk to go into it, but just
yeah,
on a very basic level, there is a large amount of Muslims in the world who believe Islamic texts, the Quran, that it's about subjugating all non-Muslims in the world any way possible. and Western educated minds, like many Jews today, especially Jews in Israel, but not just, but Jews in Australia, America, it just goes totally against our basic understanding of life values that we don't even want to go there to accept that that can even exist. No, 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 that can't be. It can't be. It can't, and we just ignore it. And it just empowers those elements within the Muslim community who do believe in it and to continue doing what they're doing and pushing their agenda. And little by little, it's definitely come out much more after October 7th. Now, I want to play for you actually a clip that I saw online from a person who's supposedly like one of the lawyers for these nurses. And I'm actually not playing the clip. I'm just saying that out loud because we're going to put the clip in.
You are being watched, and nothing and nowhere is safe. There is no such thing as a safe space. Do not trust anyone on social media. Don't engage in conversations like this, seeking to especially entrap you. Will be ultimately used against you and potentially used to completely, impact on your future. So we don't live in a situation where you can freely have a conversation, whether you mean things or don't mean things. If you are Palestinian or pro-Palestinian, if you are an Arab, and especially if you are a Muslim, God forbid, you will be met with the high end of the stick. So don't take the risk and don't engage.
We just heard, well, again, it's being posted that this is one of the lawyers for these two nurses saying straight out that these two nurses are the victims and Muslims have to be careful what they say publicly, not taking any responsibility for the horrific things that they said and even took responsibility for, like actually taking responsibility for killing patients in the hospital under their care. No, she's saying all Muslims, we have to be careful about what words we say publicly because we're being recorded. And to me, this says much more about the huge problem Western world has with not understanding, and this is even in the medical system, fellow doctors and nurses, and I'm not talking about Australia, I'm talking about Israel. This is a major problem that not enough Israelis are attuned to because we don't want to allow ourselves to think like that. Like, oh my God, I could be going for treatment of someone who's not going to be treating me properly because of their religious belief. And to them, it makes sense to abuse their power in the medical system to do something bad to me and not take care of me. Like, we don't want to go there. And I hope that what the Melbourne or what the Australian community just experienced and on the whole medical system just experienced is realizing, oh my God, this exists and we have to take this seriously. How to move forward? I don't know. It's a very dangerous slope and probably a slope that is impossible for a Western society to deal with because you can't make a blanket statement that, oh my God, anyone who's Muslim can't be a doctor or a nurse, or I won't go to anyone. It doesn't work like that in the Western system. But it definitely has to be something that especially Jews and other non-Jews have to start thinking. This is a reality that we can't ignore. We have to figure out how to deal with because ignoring it is dangerous to everyone. And I'm wondering if this type of conversation has begun again within the medical system or within the Jewish community in Australia that this has hit you like the hardest because it's within your community right now.
So the way that I see it is actually being brought to light is that the questions have been raised about. So one of those, the particular nurse, he's an Afghan refugee. He arrived in Australia when he was 12 years old, and even that, like within 24 hours of the event, taking place, it was already, well, he was, this poor boy came from Afghanistan with his family. I think his father died on the way. I didn't really, whatever. It was already, again, he's the victim here. So, but anyway, so the questions that have been raised about Australians' immigration policy. So, for example, I think Australia, don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure Australia has taken more refugees from Gaza than anywhere else in the world with minimal screening. They've taken over, apparently the figure around 3,000. So the question that's being raised in the public, and I will say there's a federal election about to happen here sometime in the next few months. It's not like in the US where we know the government can call the election within a sort of a window. So it has to be held by May. So there's going to be a federal election. So the leader of the opposition, who is much more vocal in support of the Jewish community. I don't know if you know of, our prime minister hasn't been to Israel yet. Anyway, we won't get into all the politics of it, but the opposition leader, who is is definitely a friend of ours compared to the current prime minister, has raised this in the last couple of days. What are we doing about screening immigrants who arrive in our country whose philosophy is not aligned with Western values, who bring their philosophies to Australia and want to live by them in our country? So that conversation is definitely starting, perhaps not as, like you're in detail saying, well, what does that mean about, people who work in the healthcare system in particular, but just raising it that people should be aware. There are people who are coming from other parts of the world. And Australia has always had this, we're very multicultural, and that's Australia's,
Right.
anyone can come here and we're all equal. But we're seeing that that's a lie because there are certain people who come here who don't believe in the same values as other people who live here, and who want to bring their values here and impose them if they had their way, like you're saying, would impose them on us. So it's really about the immigration policies that it's coming out. Though, like I said, the opposition leader is definitely wanting it to be reviewed. He's been very vocal against, the 3,000 Gazans just being allowed in. Whereas, Israelis who want to get into Australia now are very heavily screened. Where were they? Where did they serve? They serve in the IDF? Where did they serve? Were they involved in, it's disgusting right now if you're an Israeli wants to come to
Really?
Australia. But
I didn't
yes,
even know that.
yes,
Meaning, if
it's
I traveled to Australia right now, I'd go through that as an IDF reserve soldier. I would go through that treatment.
I haven't seen the form, but people who've been through the process. I mean, there was one quite high
Wow.
profile story a few months ago of a couple of people wanting to come and visit their very sick grandmother in Australia, and they were denied visas, and they were waiting. I think they were waiting in Thailand to get the visa. Anyway, she unfortunately passed away so it became quite, people were known of this, and this is because there's more questions. Look it up. New Zealand is apparently even worse than Australia, but these are
Oh
questions
yeah.
that are asked, whereas people fleeing Gaza, yeah, sure, come
Let
in,
them in.
So yeah. So anyway, so on that level, definitely these questions, which hopefully will then raise this conversation about what values do these people live by and what do they hold, and how do we deal with that in our society?
Right. And then I guess just
Yeah,
focusing on the Jewish community for a second, because you're very involved in the Jewish community. Um,
yeah.
how has the Jewish community, and not just not everyone is totally Australian community is very pro-Israel, supportive of Israel, but still, even in the Australian Jewish community, there's right, there's left, there's not as pro-Israel. Or really identifying with what Israel is going through and more compassion for our enemies sometimes. How has this incident made an impact even in the last few days on the Jewish communities? Even greater solidarity with Israel or the Jewish people, or understanding our enemies in a greater context rather than just Gaza, Israel, or has it made any impact?
I mean, I think it has more, like I said, because it was so shocking. I think it's the notion. Yes, we know there are people who hold these beliefs about us and feelings and have these feelings towards us, but then to mix that in with healthcare professionals who are taking care of you, I think it's that mixture is just like, this is real, like I
Sick.
said, shaking everyone to their core. So, if anything, I mean, you talked about, there is one particular very vocal, anti-Israel Jewish group who somehow get to be the ones that the media finds to come and, speak on behalf of the community. But by and large, there's a lot of unity in the community, in the community about this. Like I said, I can just speak also from the doctors, chat that I'm on, that everyone's, very supportive. And interestingly, a few of the doctors have taken on since October 7th to document incidents, obviously none as shocking as this, but there's been a lot more, subtle anti-Semitism happening in, even amongst their colleagues. Definitely patients. I've had patients of mine who, were reluctant to take their child we have excellent world-class children's hospital, reluctant to take because it was known that it was, I guess, in the media. It made it, that there was Palestinian propaganda being placed in the hospital. There were, that healthcare workers are often involved in the Palestinian, protests outside hospitals, inside hospitals. They've been very vocal. So there's a group of doctors who've taken upon themselves to report these incidents to the regulator, because there's, the medical regulator, the one who's deregistered these nurses. That's where we're supposed to go. However, as you've just said, what's ended up happening in a couple of cases is that the doctors who've gone with this stuff, the whistleblowers, if you like, they've been the ones who've been called to task. So
Right.
it's sort of like this perverse. So there's people who've really been championing this, to let people know actually what's going on. I mean, I had another case, an Israeli patient who was pregnant, and she told me she would rather have a home birth. She didn't want to go to the hospital to give birth because she was worried. She knows that some of the nurses and some midwives, or the opinions that they hold, and she was scared to go. Um, Another Israeli family who were living not right in the middle of the Jewish community, they came to see me, and they were like, literally, they where the area where they were living, they were scared to go to a doctor or to a hospital there,
Wow.
because they didn't know what people are going to say with Israeli. So yeah, so this has all been going
And
on.
this is
So
before the incident from last week, I imagine, or no?
yeah, 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 yeah. Before the incident, yeah, yeah. So
Wow.
in social media terms, as I'm not really on social media a lot, but I see on this doctor chat, there's all these Facebook groups, Doctors for Palestine, and there's a famous one called Medical Mums. Like, medical mums, what could be more, caring, compassionate than medical mums? Well, apparently this medical mums is full of Jew hate, and to the point that the Jewish doctors who try and stand up and say something, they just ban them from the groups and stuff. So
Wow.
yeah, this has been going on. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Well, Dr. Debbie Hertz, thank you so much for your time and for your on-the-ground insight to allow the rest of us to better understand. Because again, most people just see the video clip, are shocked by it, upset by it, makes whatever impact, life goes on. But here, it's nice being able to hear from you specifically from the ground, how it developed, how it impacted, how it's impacting, specifically the Australian Jewish community right now. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me on.
It is a pleasure, and looking forward to seeing you, your children, your grandchildren, visiting Israel, joining us in Israel. I believe like one of
Oh
the
man, we should be there. Oh, but yeah, we should be there very soon.
Amen, amen, amen. Wonderful. All right, so signing off for another episode of the Pulse of Israel, here in our eternal and ancestral homeland, the land of Israel, in our beautiful biblical ancestral Judean hills. This is Avi Abelo for another episode of the Pulse of Israel. If you are not yet a subscriber, what are you waiting for? Go to pulseofisrael.com to sign up, where you get a belief-based, inspiring, politically incorrect understanding of Israel, the Jewish people, and the freedom loving world. And we are a donor-based operation. We need your support as we are heavily censored across social media platforms and shadow banned. Every donation, large or small, helps us be able to reach and inspire more people. Just visit pulseofisrael.com and click on the donate button every once in a while. Shalom, everyone, and thanks for watching.
Pulse of Israel, frontline videos from the Holy Land. Support our work by donating today.